It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. From roommates to co-hosts, this is the BS Sports Show with Brendan Azoff and Stefan Rosner. Your go-to destination for New York hockey and NHL news. And now it's time to drop the puck. Here are your hosts, Brendan Azoff and Stefan Rosner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BS Sports Show, a very unique BS Sports Show because this is the first one that is all hockey-based. And as you guys can see, we have a new setup here. It looks really good. I'm going to be joined in just a moment by Stefan Rosner. There he is, and we are ready to get things going today. I know, Stefan, you have a story to go to after what's been a little bit of a crazy week with us figuring out this whole new streaming platform and preparing for our first all-hockey show.
Yeah, not really much of a story. I just have an apology I need to make on behalf of myself at the BS Sports Show. So this is to Taylor Hall. So, dear Taylor Streba Hall, yes, that is your middle name, Streba. I would like to send out my sincerest apologies as I judged you immensely on signing with the Buffalo Sabres for $8 million. There were rumors that you turned down an offer from the Colorado Avalanche, a true contender, which was valued a little lower than $8 million. After more information surfaced, it was clear why you chose Buffalo, as the Avs offered you an offensive $5 million or so around there. So again, I'm sorry for getting on your case and saying you only cared about the money over winning. If I was in your shoes, I would have taken the $5 million, but that's coming from a guy that makes around $6,000 or has around $6,000 in their bank account. Keep doing you. That's the end. Sincerely, Stefan. So, Taylor Hall, I apologize.
I think that Taylor Hall is going to accept your apology, considering that he is now $8 million richer. So he might be a little more lenient because of that. And I was a little shocked, as I know you were too, when we found out just how low those two offers were from the other contending teams. And I mean, for Taylor Hall on a one-year deal, you do want to take that money and you want to prove yourself worth that type of contract over a longer term. So I think it was a good move for him. And the Sabres now have a 1-2 punch that rivals that of any other in the league.
I mean, you look at it, and it's clearly salary cap issues for every team. The Avalanche couldn't offer $8 million, which is why they went for around $5 million. You look at a Sabres team that had the opportunity to offer him more, and that's why he took it. But at the same time, I see things that people are saying, well, Avalanche lowballed them. Well, they offered as much as they probably could in order to keep staying competitive and add more pieces. And, a guy like Taylor Hall that might be it for some team in the free agency. You sign Taylor Hall, that's about it. The Avalanche had players they wanted to bring back. They did that. That's the available room they had. They offered it. Maybe they thought Taylor Hall would take it to join a true contender, but he goes north to Buffalo, and we'll see what happens with that this season.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in there, and hopefully for them too, they gel him and Eichel, and if they do, I don't know why he wouldn't want to stay there, because that is a team that's starting to rise. I know we talk about this all the time. They still need to find that goaltender, but they are starting to rise. And I think that they may start to uptick in offense at least. Obviously, their net mining situation still needs a lot of work, and hopefully they could find that piece to their puzzle. But it's time for our first segment, Stefan. I want you to kick it off.
First segment, Brennan, what is it? It is NHL Rewind, so let's talk about that, okay? So on this date in NHL history, so we'll go in chronological order, okay? Through the years.
Let's do it.
October 20th, 1965. That was the last preseason All-Star game ever played, as the All-Star game now is played midway through, and that's when the All-Stars used to play the Stanley Cup winner. Now, how were those All-Stars selected? I have no idea. I'm assuming it's based on the season prior. That's how I'd have to bet. I know Gordie Howe had 2 goals in the last one, but then they finally moved to a midseason format that we all watch and love today. October 20th, 1974. Islander fans, get ready for this one. Islanders get their first shutout in team history in their 3rd season. Took 161 games. Billy Smith, 26 saves against the Caps, 5-0 shutout. And now, more recently, October 20th, 1993. Martin Brodeur gets his first NHL shutout, stopping 17 shots in a 4-0 victory over the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, so you go to Marty Brodeur to finish it off there with his first out of over 100. And I mean, you're talking about the best goalie of all time. And that's interesting that today on this date was his first. And crazy that he only had to stop 17 shots in his first shutout. Talk about a pretty light workload to get your first shutout in. But that's a different time. That's when the Devils played trap defense, and they were very hard to score against. And I mean, you look at the other two, right? The Islanders' first shutout in team history in their third season. That's kind of crazy to think about too.
I mean, you look at it back then, and yes, goaltending wasn't the art form that it is today, and it was probably a lot harder to get shutouts. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They got one though. It took 161 games, but they got one, and Billy Smith, the one to do it. So I mean, that's great. But yeah, NHL Rewind, Brendan, I like that. It shows things that happened in the past. I didn't even know the All-Star game wasn't played halfway the whole entire time until I did the research. So I mean, I think I knew something about that, but I didn't know they played the champs. I know that year. The All-Stars played the Canadians. The Canadians won the Cup the year prior. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, back then, the Canadians won the Cup all the time. So that probably was a normal occurrence. But I mean, when you think about that, right, what would you prefer? Would you prefer an All-Star game midseason like it is now, or kind of after the champion's been crowned to see how good they really are by playing the best of the best in the league?
Well, here's my take on this. I'm not a huge fan of having All-Star games midway through a season because it just rewards players for doing a great job in the first half. In every sport, they usually, besides football, which no one watches the Pro Bowl anyway, they play it after the season's over. I like that, but at the same time, risk of injury before the playoffs. So maybe it's something you should do after the Stanley Cup final, but then again, everybody's exhausted and tired. So I'm not sure. Before the season starts, if they had to play against the champions, I would still go with the All-Stars winning though every single time.
Well, I would believe that they took it a little more seriously back then. Although I obviously we didn't watch it, but I mean, you would think, because you watch it now, they're trying to monetize it to give them some compensation to entice competition. And it's still because nobody wants to get hurt, especially at that halfway point. If you're an all-star and you're on a good team, that means you're having a good season. Your team's having a good season, and you might want to take a chance at that cup run instead of risking an injury in a meaningless all-star game. But like you said, those were different times, and we move on now to the NHL wraparound, the modern NHL. And there's a lot going on, even though it's the off season. And I'll let you kick things off with one of the biggest names in broadcasting history, in Doc Emrick, regardless of sports, an absolute legend. And he hangs up the headset.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. When they took him off NHL 20, the video game, I was a little upset because that's Doc Emrick, and, hits the post with everything that he used to say, chasseed, catawampus. I don't know if that's a word.
Waffle-boarded.
The stuff that he said would bring you into the game a lot more, even if you had I don't even know what catawampus means, but it sounded like a cool term and you went with it. But chasseed, all these little terms, something that really reminds me of like a Vince Scully, where he tells stories, he knows everything about every player. He goes onto these tangents while the game, hockey's a fast-paced game, and he still does it, pays attention to the play. I don't ever lose track going, oh, what is he talking about now? I just missed a goal. It's all collective and watching it, and it makes the experience that more exciting. And for an Islander fan, we didn't really see that many games from him because, the big market teams are the ones he did. But, the Wednesday night rivalry, when that was a thing, the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's just awesome. His calls, he's a legend.
He really is. And, for me, I'll always associate him with those big playoff games. And whenever it was a big game, whether it was like a rivalry night during the regular season or a Stanley Cup final, Stanley Cup playoffs, and it was Doc calling it, you knew that was a meaningful game with a lot of magnitude. And my favorite goal of all time is Derek Stepan's OT winner in Game 7 against the Caps, and Doc Emrick on that call. And I just remember how he pieced that whole play together, right? He goes, they've devoted all their energy to this one, talked about how Trotz and Vigneault said it stinks that there has to be a winner. And then all the way through that whole icing to the next draw, just a masterful job at broadcasting. And I don't think there's ever been somebody, at least in the NHL, that's done it. I know that Vince Scully in baseball is somebody that everyone respects, and rightfully so. He's a genius broadcaster. He would just tell stories the whole time. But Doc Emrick is the NHL version of that. So it's going to be really hard to listen to a game without him on the call.
Well, the good news is there are a lot of guys that are very good at what they do. The Islanders, he's not a huge name yet, but Brennan Burke will be, because he's just a very good broadcaster. But I want to go back to the video that was made, the Doc Emrick video that NBC played. That was one of the coolest video. It took you through pretty much when he started broadcasting, when they didn't wear helmets. There was, a lot less teams, obviously. It brings you up to now. It was a cool 5 minutes of just an update of how much hockey is transformed, and Doc being at the helm of the entirety of the growth of the sport.
Yeah, one of the coolest ways to exit too, right? Obviously, he's a broadcaster. Everyone wants to hear his voice, and it stinks because his last Stanley Cup final was done from home, so it wasn't the same. But now we get to hear him narrate his life through the sport, and it was a really great job. And his favorite memories were in it, and I thought it was awesome that they took the time out to do it, and that he was as willing as he was, because that was a long video. That was like a 5.5 minute video. So, but good on NBC. That was an awesome way to have him gracefully step out.
And I think if this was a normal year, he might not be done. But given the fact of COVID, his age, the questions of if there will be a season, we all want to say yes, but if things go bad quick, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. So I think that really played into the part of why he's hanging it up. I think as a person watching him, I would have loved for him to have like a final tour. Maybe they give him a one game for every team. I don't know. Do something interesting like that. But obviously, this is something that he really thought about. He decides to hang it up, and we wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, agreed. And hopefully they have him come back on maybe a game-by-game basis where they say, oh, this is a huge game. Are you willing to call it? That would be really awesome just to hear like a guest appearance. But moving on to somebody now that should have retired but is still kicking at the can, and that's Joe Thornton. And he signs a $700,000 deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs for 1 year. And while he's already in Switzerland playing for free, which is just absolutely awesome. The guy just loves hockey, and you love to see that. But he, on signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs, raised some eyebrows, and people like, at your age, you should want to compete for a cup. But he thinks Toronto's ready, and he said, it's the hardest hockey decision I've ever had to make. But I truly would believe that with the roster they have, with the guys they picked up this offseason, I think this team is ready to win now. So he believes in what they're doing. Obviously, we've seen this team that gets to the playoffs. That's not the problem anymore. The problem is getting over that first round hump. And if they can get over that hump, how far can they go? I really do think that offensively, we already know they're stacked. Defensively, picking up Brody was a good move. And the question still remains about Frederik Andersen in goal. I know he didn't want to be there anymore. He wanted to move on. But without him, I don't know how they're going to even make the playoffs, because he's their backbone right now in net. They don't have anybody behind him. So that part remains a little bit up in flux, but they did make a lot of good moves, bringing a lot of veteran presence. We'll see if it pans out.
I mean, they need more leadership, because clearly Tavares isn't getting it done. And a guy like Thornton's been around the block. Yes, he's never won, but he knows what it takes to get to that point. I think it's a nice signing. It's not a backbreaker. You're not expecting him to score 30 goals, but he does play a better. Maybe you help out on the defensive side, even though he's an offensive player. Getting back, positioned hockey, that's something he's done very well. But one thing he mentioned, and tell me if this is a knock on Martin Jones or not. Okay. He said, though, that he goes, I'm a real big fan of Frederik Andersen. I like what he does. And he was raving about Frederik Andersen, about how good of a goalie he is. And he wanted to play with pretty much wanted to play with a good goalie behind him. That was one of his points on deciding to go with the Leafs. So is that a knock on Martin Jones there?
I don't think so. I mean, Martin Jones, when Joe Thornton was there and they were going on the runs, he was playing well. I think it's more of just him talking up a new teammate. And I mean, the Leafs haven't won a playoff series since 2004. And like you said, he is a veteran. So he's going to come in there, try to lift everybody's spirits. And the one thing that I really want to see, I know that Thornton's up there in age, but this guy is an absolute assist machine. And I don't think there's ever been somebody in the NHL that's as crisp and clean with all their passes as Thornton is. And now he's going to be passing to Marner, Matthews, Tavares, all these guys that are just absolute snipers. So him to Matthews on a one-timer, I mean, Matthews is going to have a lot of goals this year. Even Nylander.
Yeah, it's funny. Thornton reminds me so much of Jágr, minus the 2 cups. But just the fact that I think Thornton said, I'm paraphrasing, he said something that I love this game and I don't have any thoughts of stopping soon. I think we could see this guy play till he's in his 50s, wherever it's going to be. Obviously, it won't be in the NHL because it's impossible to play at such a high level and stay there. But you said it right now. He's playing for free because he just loves the game, and you love that. Just, we think about it as people and saying, oh, this player should retire. This player should retire. I mean, this guy's been playing in the NHL longer than we've been alive.
Yeah,
or close to it. This is his life. He doesn't know anything else besides hockey. So in order for him to go, yeah, I'm done, that takes so much mental. Yeah, some players physically, you look at it and they go, okay, I have to retire. It makes the decision for them a lot easier. But for Thornton, I'm mentally ready to go. I know I can still contribute and play the game I love, whether it's in the NHL or in a lower league somewhere else. And it'll be interesting to see how long he does play for.
Yeah, I agree. And somebody that used to play for the Maple Leafs is now on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Cody Ceci. And we're going to dive into this more later on because we have some discussion to have about that. But he signs a 1-year deal with the Penguins. He had a goal and 7 assists last year. Not a huge move. Somebody that I don't necessarily know how much he helps them on the back end, but Pittsburgh has been trying to get these veteran guys that have done it before to come in and help their defensive system. And Cody Ceci's not that old. He doesn't have that much experience, and he hasn't proven a whole lot in this league. So it's definitely a little bit of a head scratcher there in Pittsburgh.
Well, good news, though, because they didn't overpay like they overpaid Tanev.
Yeah.
They gave him $1.25 million. And this is a guy, though, he's been in the league for 7 years, and he averages 21 minutes per game. So if anything, he eats ice. He has a fair amount of ice time, and the fact that we don't know a lot about him and he's not that noticeable means he's probably doing something right on more nights than not, which is a good sign for Penguins defense. Was 11th. They led the 11th fewest goals in the league this past season, and defense has been a problem for the Penguins. Even Chris Letang has not been the same. You know, they had Mata, traded him. They've always had an issue with their defense the last couple of years. So maybe Ceci finds a home in Pittsburgh and helps them solidify their back end. I know Jari's still a young netminder, and he's going to need all the help he can get. So if this guy can do that for him and help him out, this team's going to be a lot better.
Definitely. And I think that the back end needs to be solidified for them to have success. We know what they can do offensively, but I mean, outside of Chris Letang over the years, they really haven't had that one guy. Obviously, they have Marino now with a great rookie season. So you have that 1-2 kind of combination, but you still got 4 other spots that have to be filled by serviceable defensemen, and it's been tough for them. Moving on to somebody now that used to be in Pittsburgh and has become a figure in Vegas after that whole first year, taking them to the Cup. And then he got kind of replaced by Robin Lehner. And we thought that Fleury was going to get moved. That seemed to be the right decision, right? You just signed Lehner to an extension. You don't need 2 starting goaltenders. But Fleury's staying, and he seems to be content with being Lehner's backup.
Yeah, he pretty much said right now Lehner's the guy. They didn't even say right now. He said Lehner is the guy. This is the guy they want. I want to back him up. I want to be there. I don't think Fleury at his age wants to leave. He said he doesn't know how many years he has left. Vegas is a true Cup contender, if not the favorite right now. I know it's between them and Colorado, and we'll get to that shortly. But you look at Fleury, 2.77 goals against average last season. It's not good. I think he had around a 905, 907.
Yep.
So it wasn't Fleury that we're used to, and the questions all loom. Oh, is he done? Is that it? But now if Robin Lehner plays the majority of the games and you have Fleury on the back end rested as your 1B, I'm not even going to call him a backup because he's still a serviceable starting goaltender in this league, I think. You have Pietrangelo now on the team. The team is just, again, it's better. So I think that Fleury could still be a dominant force. I mean, he said, I don't have a lot of years left ahead of me. I know that Lehner is their goalie. They place their trust in Lehner. I don't think I'll be able to regain the starting job, but I will nevertheless compete to win it back. And I love that. He came to grips with the reality, but he's not saying that just because Lehner's the starter right now doesn't mean Fleury still can't be good. You know, you think sometimes, well, Fleury's just hoping Lehner goes down with an injury. That way you get back in there. That's not the case at the NHL level. It's all about teamwork. You've seen Fleury take the back seat on Stanley Cup runs with the Penguins. Not that he wants to. Of course he wants to be out there, but he knows what he has to do for the team. If he could help this team get to the playoffs and have Lehner run through it and they win the whole thing, he's going to be just as satisfied. And that's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, he does seem like the ultimate teammate, right? Everybody he's played with raves about him. And then you think about his time in Pittsburgh, and he took the backseat to Murray there on 2 Cup runs. And if it works, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So obviously him being that backup role, mentoring, he's okay with it. He's comfortable with it. And he knows that, hey, if I show up to training camp and play hard, and Lehner does too, and he gets that starting job, and he gets that opening night start, but struggles, I'm going to have to come in and hold down the fort. And I think that he kind of relishes in that role where he doesn't have to play a lot. He is getting older, so he gets to stay fresher. And it's similar to what Henrik Lundqvist is going to be doing in Washington now, where he's going to come in, hold the fort down until the starter can right the ship. And I mean, for Vegas, you can't ask for a better 1A, 1B than that. You got a guy with a lot of Cup experience. You have a guy in Lehner who's found himself over the last 3 years, become a fan favorite, really played well for you all postseason. And now he's going to get a full stretch run with this team. They add Pietrangelo. So just a really great situation in Vegas right now. And
you look at Fleury, he can't leave because his pad setup's too nice.
That's exactly right. And so is Leonard's. Now, I think that black and gold with the pads is just, oof, so fresh.
Fleury's is straight gold, and you just love it. And he's done so much for the franchise, and it feels like he's been with them forever, but they haven't been around that long. And I think that is there a chance if Fleury does really well halfway through that maybe they trade him? Maybe. But I can't for Vegas right now. Why? There's zero reason to do it. If let's say they're rolling as we get to the trade deadline, why are you going to trade? Like, why? You need those two goalies. You know what it takes to win in this league. You need two goaltenders in case you got a back-to-back in the playoffs. We don't know what the format's going to be for this playoff. We saw this year they had back-to-backs and stuff like that and less time off. So I think Fleury will stay there, and I think Fleury will stay with Vegas for the rest of his career. But again, you'd love to see him being a model teammate right there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that his contract with a flat cap is pretty immovable. I don't think that they're going to be able to find a team, especially at a deadline, that's willing to take that on. When at that point, you're going to be calling up younger players who might be getting bonuses. Like, there's a whole situation there. So I think that plays into the reason why they're keeping him and why he has to be content with being a backup. But like we said, it is a good problem to have. So now let's move on to a couple of signings. You have Nolan Patrick, who has been kind of MIA and obviously out of his control with migraines the last couple of years, accepts a qualifying offer from the Flyers. And Evgeny Dadonov signs with the Senators on a 3-year, $15 million deal. Another very low-key move by the Senators that is really nice. They're adding a 25-goal scorer to their roster.
To go to Nolan Patrick real quick, for someone he's suffering from migraine disorder, and I'd suffered with that when I was younger. And I remember there was one time where I was getting ready to go in net, hop in net, ice hockey, and all of a sudden I couldn't see. That's one of the side effects is you get blurry vision, you can't see. And I didn't play. Obviously, I can't see, I can't play. Yep. And I thought to myself, well, can I still play hockey? Like, if I can't see and do anything and that I'm useless, and maybe it's because of the cold, whatever it was. Fortunately, I grew out of it. But, for some guy like Nolan Patrick who's getting it now, I got it when I was younger, he's getting it now. It's hell. You wake up, once you get the migraine, it's pretty much lock yourself in a room, turn off the lights. You can't do anything. Everything's sensitive. Everything hurts. And then you wake up. And for me, I got them maybe like once a month. But clearly he's getting them all the time. And it's sad. But fortunately, he accepted qualifying offer. He seems to be making strides that he'll play this upcoming season. I mean, he hasn't played since April 29th.
That's a long time.
Not even of this year, of last year.
It's crazy how long that is. Now
the question is, great, and he's healthy, but how can he contribute on the ice if he has been out of it for such a long time? So it'll definitely take some adjustment. For Dadonov, you said it, low-key signing. I mean, you look at the Senators, and they're one of those teams that it's like salary cap's turned off. They can sign everybody they want. They have the opportunity to do so. I mean, this guy Dadonov, did you know, Brendan, that he played in the NHL a while back?
That I did not know. I've just known him from his Florida days. That's it.
Oh, wait. It gets more interesting. He's 31 years old. From 2009 to 2012, he played for Florida. He didn't get that much playing time. Left for the KHL after the 2011-2012 season. Then he goes and plays in the KHL, bouncing around from teams. Comes back in 2017. Since returning, he has scored 25 or more goals in each of the last 3 seasons, 70 points in 2018-2019. And this is a guy that he's shown he's consistently a scorer. And I think for the Senators, they got a lot they got to do. They have Murray in net. You got to see how he plays in a new home. They got a young defense. They got young forwards. Again, they moved on for practically everyone. This is a veteran guy they brought in at not a bad cost at all, I don't think. And he's a consistent scorer. So if he could help this team and these young guys grow, he's a professional. He's been around. Good for him. Now, this leaves up the thing with Hoffman. Hoffman is unsigned. The question is, does he go back to Florida or does he find a new team? He said he's looking for a 1-year deal. So he's trying to do what Hall did. I really could see him going back to Florida because if he doesn't go back to Florida, I mean, they're losing 2 guys that are consistent 25, 20 goal scorers.
Yeah, I think they have to sign him.
I mean, I think they have to. As much as I want the Islanders to get him, this guy has scored 25 or more goals in 5 of the last 6 seasons.
His numbers are always crazy.
The one problem, and plus minus does not dictate a player's worth, but he is negative plus minus the last 3 seasons. He was a -5 last year. It's gotten as high as a -25. And I'm going to credit that to how bad Bobrovsky was at points. Some goals shouldn't going in. But there's been a consistent thing with his game is that he's not a defensive-minded player when he needs to be. That's something we saw with Ovechkin earlier in his career. So does it take the right coach? Who knows? But Hoffman's known for his offensive ability, a sniper in this league, and I think Florida has to bring him back because they've lost too much.
Well, I mean, just watching their qualifying round, even though they lost against the Islanders, you saw how accurate Mike Hoffman's wrist shot is and how lethal he could be from that sidewall. So I think that just bringing him back, the chemistry he had on that power play with Barkov and other people, it's it's going to add an immense amount of offense to that team. And it's something that they're going to have to continue to get if they're going to be successful, because their defense and goaltending was a little shaky last year. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. After the commercial break, we will go to our puck picks, look at the Stanley Cup favorites for next season, and then get into a little bit of your fan questions. So stay with us.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the BS Sports Show on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the BS Sports Show. I'm Brendan Azoff with Stefan Rosner. As always, please download the Worldwide Sports Radio Network app, available on Apple and Google Play. Obviously, it is a big app if you like the show and want to follow the network's other shows as well. So download that. You won't be disappointed. All right, Stefan, now we're going to get to our puck picks. Obviously, you can't bet on any of the games. Fantasy hockey hasn't started yet, but we can look at futures, which are the Stanley Cup odds right now. Plus money means that they're all no one's going to be favorites to win a Stanley Cup. And the favorite right now is the Colorado Avalanche at plus 800, which means $100 on that team will win you $800. And to me, Colorado's my favorite as well. So I think that Vegas got this one right. After the moves that they made, getting Saad, that team is very, very good and very, very deep.
You think them over Vegas?
Yeah, just because I think that Vegas gave up Stastny and they gave up Schmidt. Those were two pieces for them that had gelled. You know, Schmidt has been a part of that team since their franchise started. And I know they got Pietrangelo. I know they have great goaltending, but losing two and only adding one still doesn't sit right. Colorado got better and they're healthy.
I just don't trust the goaltending enough. But I still think they're going to be in a Western Conference Finals with Vegas. I mean, we say that now. We all know in hockey that the best teams usually don't ever win.
Yep.
Ever. So, I don't know. It's between me and Vegas at plus 850. And you look down the list, Stanley Cup champions Lightning are plus 900. Bruins at plus 1100. Philadelphia Flyers plus 1400. St. Louis Blues plus 1400. That rounds out your top six. For the Flyers, though, very, very interesting because I don't
like them.
First off, we talked about this earlier, is that Carter Hart is good. Wasn't great this season, is good. Played big minutes, played a big role this year in the playoffs. But what about the Flyers, to me, puts them over a team like the Blues? Yes, I know Binnington struggled. Still the St. Louis Blues. But there are other teams, like why the Islanders not favored over a
because
Flyers
they're not good.
No, but I'm serious. Like, what did the Islanders didn't add any superstar caliber, high caliber offensive weapon that they wanted to add. They still have to lock up Barzal, Pulak. They still had to bring back Matt Martin, maybe sign or trade for a guy like Palmieri, stuff like that. But what puts the Flyers ahead of the Islanders?
The Flyers finished higher, and yes, I know they struggled, but they're taking that postseason with a little bit of a grain of salt. And the Islanders didn't get better. Right, I know that Niskanen retired. The Flyers have mixed around a couple of pieces. Hart's having another year. But the team that I'm the most surprised about not seeing there is who Tampa just beat in the Cup final.
Yeah, Dallas.
And they're not in the top six to win the Stanley Cup. Like, to me, that's a little bit of a head scratcher. We know their goaltending situation is phenomenal. They have their star power. They have their Heiskanen-Klingberg defensive combination. They got Alexiak there still. And that's a good team.
I know why.
Why?
Ben Bishop now becomes a starter again, and he's not come up in big moments.
I think they would have won the Stanley Cup had Ben Bishop played.
I don't like him. I know he's very good. I just don't like him.
His numbers are so good every single year.
He's just
you've talked about how much you don't like him, and I understand it because he's like a big clunky netminder. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think I've ever looked at Ben Bishop's stats and seen higher than a 2.2 something goals against.
No, I think I'm just jealous because he's got like 10 inches on me and he doesn't have to work as hard to stop the puck because he just, boom, boom. I just think the biggest issue for him was that he seemed off balance at times. I feel like out of every goal in the NHL, he's the one that's always falling backwards. 5-hole goals, obviously, he's got probably the biggest 5-hole in the NHL. Do they win with him in it? I don't know, but could that be a consideration why they're not on this list? Do they think Khudobin and that magic that happened last year with this Dallas team was just magic for one season?
I mean, that's fair, right? And obviously, you don't know. They still have an interim head coach. They kind of caught fire, so maybe they're weighing what they did more in the regular season, how they struggled at the end more than what they did in the postseason because it was a weird circumstance. But I look at that team; they had success last year in the postseason too. They wound up losing to the eventual Stanley Cup champion, so that's back-to-back seasons where that's happened to them. And the only team that's been able to knock them out has won the cup. To me, that's the top 6 odds to win a cup the next season. Even if they don't do it, which I don't think they will. We talked about the Vegas Golden Knights and Avalanche being the best teams in the West, and I think that will remain true up until the end of the season. But to not have them up there, it's a little bit questionable, and that means that they're higher than plus 1,400. That's worth a bet. It's worth taking a chance on them going on another run.
Well, you know what? You want to know it's worth taking a chance? Betting 100 to win 10,000, Brendan. Detroit Red Wings coming back into
that is called giving up $100.
I'm kidding. But you look at the local teams and the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils. Islanders plus 2,200, Rangers plus 2,800, Devils plus 5,000. Now let's start with the Devils because I do like what they did. I liked what they did a lot this offseason. I like that they brought in Crawford. It gives a little pressure off of Blackwood. They bring in what's his name from the Leafs.
You gotta help me out.
Come on, they just traded for him.
From the Leafs?
Yeah, the winger.
Oh, Andreas Janssen.
Yes.
I'm thinking of Ryan Murray from Columbus, and you had me all messed up.
Oh, well, that too. That's a huge move. And
I like more than the other one because they need help defensively.
They do, and I think that for Subban, you kind of have a worse year. I just really like the Crawford signing. I don't know why. I don't think that he's going to be overly impressive. But just having a guy back that's one for a guy like Blackwood that you're looking for him to take that next step. I like that. Hughes, a second year in the league, trying to figure himself out. The one thing for Devils is Palmieri still going to be on the team when it starts. Consistent goal scorer. His name's been thrown out in trade rumors. I know the Islanders are going after him or want to. But this they're not competing for the cup. But I definitely think they're going to be a lot better than they were this past year. And for the Islanders and Rangers, not off by that much.
No,
it's going to be very interesting to see where both these teams finish because as much as the Islander fan of me wants to say the Rangers aren't going to do much, they probably will be neck and neck the entirety of the season, and it could come down to the last couple of games to decide who's on top of who. I just don't know how much I trust the Rangers defense, but at the same time, the Islanders offense really didn't do much during the regular season, found themselves in the playoffs, but also you have Sorokin's first year in net for the Islanders. You want to hope that he's going to be that superstar guy they've been longing for since Rick DiPietro first came up. But at the same time, that's a bit of the unknown. And yes, Varlamov's there just in case as a precautionary in case he can't handle it or struggles early, whatever the case may be. You just got to see that stuff happen before you could start talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And is Sorokin going to be the full-time starter, or are they going to split time with him and Varlamov? I think they still have to split time.
Right now, the plan is they're going to sign Corey Schneider, and I think it comes down to I don't think that management is going to let Sorokin step into the crease if he doesn't feel completely comfortable. So if he needs games in the AHL, so be it. I don't think he will. He's been practicing with the team since the bubble. He's been here. He's getting used to it. But again, see when preseason rolls around. At the same time, I think once Sorokin does come up, it'll be a split with Varlamov and Sorokin getting, let's say, the first 20 or so games. They'll split it. And then, yes, you want Sorokin to get in there and be that number one goalie, but if the tandem's working and they're both playing well, it's not just about one player. You want to see this team play to the top of their game. Everyone that can play. If Varlamov has better stats, Sorokin over the first 20 games, 10 games split, whatever, just because you want to see Sorokin in there a lot doesn't mean that's the best thing for the team. So it's going to come down to where the Islanders are right off the bat. If they are off to a really slow start, God forbid, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if they're off to a slow start and Sorokin's struggling, let him sit back and watch for a little bit. I think it's all about his growth, but at the same time, you can't really jeopardize playing him if he's not feeling perfect over the team's success. That's the hard part because you don't know until you see what he can do on the ice in the NHL.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm doing an article now for Puck Pros where I'm going to be comparing and ranking all the goalies in each division. And you look at, Corey Crawford's numbers last year. He was really good, especially in the advanced stats department. Didn't have many really bad starts, a lot of quality starts, and a lot of goals saved above average. So the Devils got a great backup there. I think his numbers last year were actually better analytically than Mackenzie Blackwood. And that was on a bad Chicago team.
Well, that's why they traded Leonard. They
Yeah.
realized that they thought, Corey Crawford's coming back from injury after injury with his head. You never want to have that. We have Leonard here. Let's see what they do. And they realized, one, Leonard's obviously worth more. Crawford's getting up there in age and his injuries and all that stuff. But Corey Crawford showed that he could still play. And that's why Leonard was moved, because they can get something for Leonard. We talk about the Blackhawks right now. They're going into rebuild. The ownership sent out that whole long letter like the Rangers did a couple of seasons ago. And I think that Crawford showed that he can still be a force in this league, whether it be a starter or a backup. He split time this year. But I really think he's going to be such a good role model for Blackwood. And this will be a test. If Blackwood plays very well under Crawford, then it shows that he's taking the next step. If Blackwood struggles and some reason Crawford becomes the number one in Devils, that's the worst thing that the Devils want to see.
Yep.
If that happens, that's not good. That's not why you brought Crawford in here. You brought Crawford in here to relieve some stress and teach him a thing or two to help him get better. So it's interesting to see the Devils again, long way away from being a true contender. But I mean, you look at these picks, and obviously this is going to change significantly. If some team, let's say Hoffman goes to the Islanders, maybe they get a little bump up there. Not significant, but maybe a bump. Or if some other teams, like you said, the Dallas. What if Dallas signs a guy like Hoffman? I'm not saying it's going to happen at all, but maybe they bump up. So it's cool to see right now, though, after a COVID-riddled regular season to bubble playoff hockey. This is where Vegas has it. So again, plus 800, Avalanche leading it for the Cup. And again, the best team never wins. But
that's not true. Tampa Bay was the best team last year.
That's not true.
I mean, Boston had a good regular season, but people look at Tampa Bay as the best team in the league.
But fine. The best team in the standings doesn't win. But this doesn't take into consideration for that.
Exactly. This is not standings.
Yeah. No.
I can tell you right now that I will be putting money on the Avalanche as my pick. And I was going to do this before I even saw this list. I just think that I thought that they were going to win the Cup last year. And then obviously that second round, they had a lot of injuries. They still forced a Game 7 against Dallas. And they should have won that game. They blew the lead late. But I think if they're fully healthy, we questioned their goaltending this year, and it wound up holding up. The Grubauer played very
good.
well.
I just don't trust them for – I don't know. I don't trust them in the bigger moments.
I think that fully healthy, you add Saad, who's done a lot in his career. He's been around. He's played with a lot of veteran leadership, so he only helps that offense. To me, you can't stop them from scoring. We already saw that. And now they're adding, a little bit of a health factor to it. They added Devon Taves to the bottom pairing there. They got so much, they got better, but not like noticeably, but it's going to help their roster. To me, they're the favorites, and I think they do win.
I just want to throw a little bit on Detroit just for,
don't do it.
Just for like a giggle,
I mean, what's his name? Kevin Malone in The Office says if somebody gives you 10,000 to 1 odds, you take it.
Yeah, right? Let's not take advice from him.
That this is not the 10,000 to 1 odds. They took on Mark Stahl's contract, but let's get to our fan questions now. We are going to Chirping With. This is our segment where usually we're going to have an interview, but today we're going to take some fan questions. And our first question is from Corey DeLucia at Corey DeLucia 27. It says, who finishes with a better record this upcoming season, the Rangers or the Islanders?
You go first.
Well, you had talked about how it's going to be neck and neck. This season, they finished 1 point apart in the standings, and I think you're going to have something similar next year. So I'm going to say whichever team wins the rivalry games is going to finish ahead. I know that last week I had ranked the Islanders ahead of the Rangers, and I still believe that because I'm not sure how the Rangers defense will react. But point-wise, I'm going to say the Rangers finish 1 point ahead of the Islanders this year.
I'm going to say the Islanders finish ahead just again because I just don't trust the Rangers defense. And, the thing is also streaks. We saw the Islanders go on a streak this year, which pretty much saved their season. And you look back, minus those points, give them, average what the NHL would do during that length, and they're probably not even in the playoffs. So, the question is, how streaky can these teams be? The Islanders struggle to score. But if they figure out how to score and they go on a little streak like that, that's a big bump for a Rangers team that's probably going to be – I feel like the Rangers are a more consistent effort out there than the Islanders at times, and that goes back to injuries-riddled Islanders this season. But I'm going to say the Islanders finished with a 3-point lead.
You remember, you're talking about a team that was 10-2 with Shesterkin in goal. Now he's their everyday starter. So
again, it comes back to Sorokin. Can Sorokin do what Shesterkin's doing? That's the big key, because Varlamov was good during the regular season. He's not going to make the saves though, like those crazy saves. But this guy like Sorokin, we hear, could make those crazy saves and then some. And those are 2 points or 1 point, 0 points. You know,
you got to remember, it took Shesterkin half a year.
I know
to adjust. So that's why, like, I know Islanders fans want to have Sorokin in, and rightfully so. You want to see that guy, and he's going to make that NHL team. But I think Varlamov is your number one, because Sorokin has to adjust. He's going to have to do it in practices, not necessarily in games. And he's going to come into a game, and if he gives up 1 or 2 weak goals at first, don't get angry at him, because he's still adjusting. It's a completely different ice surface. But it'll be – I just want to watch a Rangers-Islanders game where it's Sorokin versus Shesterkin, and just the fan base, the atmosphere, hopefully we could be there, is going to be unreal, because we've been waiting for that matchup. We've heard about it for so long, and now it's finally here.
You know what's going to happen? The backup, one of the team's backups is going to start one of those.
Georgiev,
games.
probably, because Georgiev's numbers against the Islanders are absurd.
And then my Islanders might start. I don't know. Again, Trotz isn't going to play let's give what the fans want, because if he did what the fans wanted, the Islanders would be in the ground.
That is very true.
And probably for the Rangers. So let's move on.
Yep. Our next question comes from Jordan Rosner at JBros8_. And the question is, with the Rangers' young core becoming set in place and 2 alternate captains departing in Stahl and Fost, who will the Rangers now give the A's to, and will they finally name someone to be the captain? If so, who?
All right,
so
let me start with this, because I'm not watching the Rangers as realist as you do. On a very big into that, but I don't think you go captain. I think what you do is you give 2 A's to who has the A's right now.
Well, 2 of them just left.
Yeah, so who's the other one that has the A?
Mika or Kreider.
Does.
Well, both. Okay. They rotated a road.
All right, so I keep Kreider the A. I think you give Zibanejad and Panarin the other 2. Or I really believe that I think Zibanejad should wear the C.
I think it's going to be Kreider who gets the captaincy. I think that Zibanejad is going to be the other A, and that Trouba is going to be an A. Because you do want to have
You don't want to stock up on.
Yeah, you want to have a defenseman. Yeah. The Rangers have historically rotated road and home alternates. So Foss was a road alternate, and he would switch at home with either Stahl or Zibanejad, one of those 2. I could see them doing that with Panarin and Mika. Whoever, like, if Mika doesn't get the C, then they could rotate up front. But to me, the question of captaincy comes down to Kreider or Zibanejad. Yeah. Kreider signed longer term. He's been there the longest. He's that leader now. And I think that by them like awarding him that contract, they're kind of saying, you're our leader now. You're the guy that we're going to look towards. As close as Zibanejad is to that, I think they're going to lean towards Kreider when making that decision, just because he's seen a lot more. He's been on those competitive Rangers squads that have gone all the way. He knows what it takes, and he does appear to have a great relationship with everybody.
No, I like that. If Kreider got it, I would like that. I just think what we've seen from Zibanejad, yes, you don't want to pick the best player on the ice as your captain. That's not usually how it works. It's just that you wanted the best teammate, but the leadership skills on the ice translated to his stat line and the big moments. He came through in big. What was that game? We had 5 goals, right?
Against Washington in OT, yep.
But he mounted it. The Capitals kept scoring. He kept scoring. He picked up the slack when his team wasn't doing anything. He comes through in the big moments. That's a captain.
Yep. I mean, I could tell you that when the Rangers made the playoffs, some of the goals that Kreider scored would dictate captaincy.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes.
So to me, it's a good problem to have. I don't know if they will award a captain this year, but I think it's been 3 years since McDonough left that they haven't had to see. I think with a young core, you need a captain. Let somebody get solidified in that role. All right. Our next question comes from at Azoff Ethan. If the Rangers don't re-sign Strome, how will they use him to trade, and what would they want in return? So I don't think they're going to trade him at this point, just because that kind of passed after the draft, after free agency started. So I do think they work out a deal. But to me, if they were going to trade him, they would look for a either replacement center and a pick, so not take a lesser center on, or look to improve that left side of the defense and then move somebody like a Tony DeAngelo, who they just re-signed, for a center. But that's why, because they just signed DeAngelo, they have these young guys coming up. I think they're going to keep Ryan Strome.
I think they're going to keep Strome just because this guy bounces around from, he was on the Islanders, then the Oilers. He couldn't find a true home, and he found it with the Rangers. He played very well, And I think that, again, on this young team, why are you going to move on from a guy that really showed that he has a good fit there? I mean, he's going to arbitration, right? So you have to see what he's worth. He did it with the Islanders before, and I think he gets I don't think there's a reason to trade him. It's not like he's going to be worth a lot, and at the same time, he just gives your team, the Rangers, more depth. And if their defense is going to struggle, they're going to need as much offense as possible. Look at Colorado. I mean, when goaltending is not great, they don't have to be amazing because they score X amount of goals a game that just blow teams out of the water. That's what they did in the playoffs. They scored a lot, gave up a few, but if they could score more than the opponents, you're going to win every single night. So I think Strome, though, found a home with the Rangers, and I think he's there to stay.
All right. Our final question is from Charging Rhino. Players like Jesper Fast often go as unsung heroes for a team and are very important. Which player on the 3 local teams, the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils, will be next year's unsung heroes?
All right, well, I'll start with the Islanders just because. So I got 2. He has not been signed back yet, but Derek Brassard is a guy I really think is going to be brought back. They have to figure out their money situation. If Brassard comes back, the way he finished off the postseason, I mean, he showed that he's not just an old aging veteran, and he could still contribute. And for a team like the Islanders, where depth scoring is so crucial, I think he'll be a key part. But my dark horse is Noah Dobson, because he's now going from being a 7th defenseman at times to not even, he played 1 playoff game, and now he's now in your top 4 defensive pairing. And it's going to be a real test if he can handle it. And if he can handle it, giving up Devon Taves for 2 picks is not going to hurt as much. And also, he's a very young guy. I think he's 20 years old. If he could play top 4 D minutes and play very well, he's just going to make this team a lot stronger. And, it takes the stress off the back of a lot of players on this team that maybe don't know what to expect from Dobson. We saw glimpses of greatness. We also saw glimpses of, oh God, you can't be on the ice. Like there's stuff like that. And you think with more ice time, he'll improve his skills. I think he's going to be a big contributor to this Island. He's going to have to.
Yep.
They lost Taves. They're probably going to try to deal Boychuk. Letty's going to stay. You have Aho in the minors that you're going to bring up. He just got a contract extension. So the defense on the back end, the bottom pairing's a question mark. But Dobson has to play really well because he's your top 4, and you can't expect him to play less minutes, and he's got to contribute.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it would be obvious to say their 4th line because they're not really unsung anymore. All Islanders fans know exactly what they do. But that Dobson pick does make a lot of sense because of that trade that they just made with Devon Taves. For me, for the Rangers, I'll start with, I think that Brendan Lemieux is the unsung hero. Next season, if he gets re-signed, right now he's still currently going through that whole process of being an RFA, but he was suspended the first 2 games of the postseason, and the Rangers got pushed around physically by the Carolina Hurricanes. And if he's in that game, especially that game 1, right after Foss gets hit, they come down and score, he's going to calm down that tone, almost like a Tom Wilson-esque or a Matt Martin for the Islanders, right? Where the other team gets a little more cautious when he's on the ice. They know that if I step up and throw a big hit, I'm going to have to answer to him. And he's one of the tougher guys now in the NHL, and he could hold his own. So I think that him playing within the lines where he stands up for his teammates, throws the body, but does it clean, where he's not getting suspended or penalized for it, will be a huge factor in the Rangers' success in the season, letting their skilled guys have some room to work with on the ice. For the Devils, I'm going to go with Ryan Murray, who I talked about briefly earlier. I think that him going on to that second line of defense, maybe playing with PK Subban, maybe playing with Severson, we'll see how that works out. But if he can be good defensively and minimize the chances that are given up by the New Jersey Devils, it's definitely going to help them go the other way offensively, help a young guy like Jack Hughes get on the rush, Nico Hischier pick up the puck and score more. So I think that Ryan Murray is going to play a key role for the Devils.
Well, I'm going to take someone you just mentioned. I was going to take PK Subban because I think that he can't have a worse year than last year. I think that he knows that can't happen. The way he played this year, it's just you can't have that again because of the money that they're paying him. And also, what does it do to your team? Your team looks at you and sees, okay, turnover here, turnover there. Not playing, you're a defender, play defense. And I think that this team has a lot more question marks. How is Jack Hughes going to play? How is Blackwood going to play? Murray's coming over. How is he going to play? Hischier going to take that next step. Subban, maybe you don't want him to stand out, but that's a good thing. You just want him to be consistent. I think that he will help. If this Devils team wants to take the next step It's going to come from their rookies and their young players, but also their veterans. And PK Subban's a veteran at this point in his career, and he's got to find a way to figure it out. And if he could play serviceable on D and contribute a lot more offensively, this team becomes more of a force than maybe people would give them credit.
I agree. I think that PK Subban will definitely have a big impact next season, and they expect him to have it this year, and he struggled. There's no two ways around it. He was not good this year on defense and offensively. They put him on the power play. He wound up getting demoted to the second unit, so just not a good all-around year, and he has to turn it around for them to bounce back. But those three unsung heroes, I think, all will have key roles with their teams. Dobson, to me, might be the most important just because of the trade aspect. Obviously, the Islanders are banking on him being able to move into that role. And he played one game in the postseason last year, and I thought he looked very good for somebody that was coming into all that pressure without really playing in a little bit. So we'll see how he can adjust this year. Obviously, we have a lot more to talk about. Still another hour to go on this show. When we come back, we're going to get into our hometown hockey. We're going to dive into the Rangers and the Islanders. We're going to talk about all the moves that they've made, what they still have to do. And then we're going to get into a little other stuff later on with the speed skate, some questions to go into, and we're going to talk about what's BS around the league. So don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the BS Sports Show on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back to the BS Sports Show, everybody. I'm Brendan Azoff. With me, as always, is Stefan Rosner. And let me tell you something. We're really excited to get into the New York Rangers and New York Islanders right now because there was so much action that went on over the last week with free agency signings, the Islanders making a trade, and what's going to happen in the future because the Rangers are on the come up. They're young. They're improving, but they still have to get these key RFAs signed. The Islanders move on from a defenseman that's been there a couple of years. They got another young guy coming up in Noah Dobson. They have Sebastian Aho as well. So there's a lot to go on right now and exciting to be a fan of hockey in the tri-state area, especially the two New York teams. And when they meet this year, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So we'll kick things off with the New York Rangers. Stefan, you want to break down the two signings for us? Yeah,
so big guys they bring back, I think crucial players to their success. And Alexander Georgiev's back, 2 years, $4.85 million, 24 years old, and Tony DeAngelo, who was one of the best defensemen in the league last season, 2 years, $9.6 million. They avoid arbitration with both of them. Look at Georgiev's stats: 3.04 goals against average, 9.10 save, 0.12 goals saved above average. But that stats we'll talk about in a second because there's some things we need to know about that stat. But he's a solid netminder behind Shesterkin, and I think losing Lundqvist, you knew that was going to happen. Having him back there, he seems comfortable in the Rangers sweater, in their system. He plays very well. So I think he's a perfect person to have behind Shesterkin. Then DeAngelo, 15 goals, 30 assists, and 68 games played. Averaged 19-17 of ice time. Tied fourth in NHL defenseman in points. So I think these two moves, key moves, especially for a team that's still on the rise and trying to make an impact. You can't say enough. I know Tony DeAngelo may speak too much on Twitter about his personal opinions, and people don't like that. That is what it is. But his game speaks. Yes, he got walked against, who is it, Aho?
It was Aho, yeah. The other Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, he got walked, and, young players are going to make mistakes like that. It's a learning experience. He knows what he did wrong on that play, clearly. And I think, though, bringing back a guy like that, I mean, how could you not? The other thing we could have done was what's one of the questions we answered about trading Tony DeAngelo maybe for forward or something like that. But I think he showed you how good he is and that the ceiling's still the limit. The sky's the limit. And, you think about the best defensemen in the league and up and coming, Makar, Hughes, Heiskanen. Why can't you throw Tony DeAngelo's name into that equation?
Well, his teammate Adam Fox is in that equation. I think that for Tony DeAngelo, getting him back and for only $4.8 million per year for 2 years is a good deal for them because if it doesn't pan out, it's only 2 years, right? That's still a contract you can move next season or at a deadline because after it expires, DeAngelo is still an RFA. So that gives them a lot of control over his situation. Obviously, the Rangers have a ton of prospects coming up defensively as well as offensively. And to me, that's why what they're doing here makes sense. You don't want to go out and start spending a ton of money, trading all these people, because you have the prospects coming in. You have on both sides of the puck people that you plan on being a big part of your future. So why not bridge the gap this year with these RFAs? Hopefully you can compete like they did last year, and then next season really start to get all these young guys coming in. And for Georgiev, re-signing him was a no-brainer after letting Lundqvist go. You now have one of the best goaltending tandems in the league, especially young goaltending tandems in the league. Both these guys are 24 years old. And then you look at the defense with DeAngelo. The left side still becomes a little bit of an issue. Do they move him over? Do they keep him on the right and go with Smith, Johnson, and Lindgren on the left? It remains to be seen. Do they let Keandre Miller come up after a little bit? A lot of issues to solidify there. But DeAngelo was 4th in the league in points for a defenseman. Great season, received a Norris vote. So you really can't let a guy like that just walk for free. It was either you trade him or re-sign him, and I'm very content with that deal. He was the first New York defenseman since Brian Leetch in 2000, 2001 to score 15 goals, which to me is crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah, I mean, when you're comparing someone to a guy like Brian Leetch, that's good company. That's
heavy air
where you want to be in. And I think, is it too pricey? I don't think so. I mean, paying him what they paid him, DeAngelo, I'm speaking, is he played well. It's not like you're overpaying a guy. Yes, maybe he hasn't had the hugest sample size, but at the same time, the Rangers are banging that for at least 2 years. He'll play to that or maybe a little lower. But I think Tony DeAngelo is a very good hockey player. I saw what he did against the Islanders when he sniped late in the game. I forgot what game it was, but he sniped him, and I was like, okay, he can shoot.
I think that was the first game at Nassau Coliseum.
I want to say that was the game Kreider scored with seconds left to win.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that they had tied it up, and then that was a goal to give the Rangers a 2-1 lead.
Oh, okay, yes, he's right at a penalty box.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I realized I hate Tony DeAngelo. But then again, I hate more the Islanders taking penalties. But, I don't think it's too pricey. Again, both these guys are going to really help this team grow. And you look at Ryan Strome, Brendan Lemieux still unsigned. And you have around $10 million to sign both of those guys. So you already talked about how Lemieux's your guy that you think is going to be a big difference maker, especially when he's out there, because we saw that he was suspended. So you obviously think that they re-sign him, and we think Strome gets re-signed as well. The cap just creates so many issues for so many teams. We'll get to the Islanders in a second because it's really hurting them. And due to bonuses and salary, Kravtsov and Barron will likely be held off the roster. Kravtsov's played well. You're seeing all the videos of what he's doing and everything like that. You think that there's a role for him on this team this season or like later on in the year, or you think that he's still a little bit, maybe 2 years away?
It's tough because there is definitely a role for him. They're planning the role for him as we speak. And that third line right wing seems to be that vacancy that he could fill. And to me, it would be an ideal scenario to have him come in and play on the right wing with Lafreniere on the left and Edel in the middle. That young trio could just put up some serious numbers if they all play to their level. But he's playing so well in Russia right now. He's destroying the KHL, and he's building up so much confidence that with the bonus situation and the cap situation this year, you might be better off leaving him there, especially with the way that the Rangers front office appears to be believing that this year is another year in the rebuild and that next year starts their competitive balance. So I think that you're going to see them keep him overseas. And remember, he's on loan, so he could be recalled whenever they want, and he got to come over. But to me, the whole bonus situation with him, it's like an $800,000 contract, but if he winds up playing in a certain amount of games, it jumps up to $1.75 million, and you don't want to have to pay that to a young kid. You don't want to take a year off his contract either with the expansion draft and everything coming up. There's just so many factors around it that I think you're going to see him stay out. I think you're going to see Barron stay in the AHL because Howden's already up at that fourth line center. But don't be mistaken, if these guys struggle at the NHL level, Kravtsov and Barron will get called up. I mean, there comes a point where you got to choke on the bonuses and just say, hey, we're going to let our best guys play.
And then you look at it also, too, with COVID. When is this season beginning? Rather him play over there and get the work in. I mean, a lot of NHL players taking the time off.
Yep.
A young guy like that has got a lot to prove, and he wants to showcase that he can be a force in the NHL, a very young guy. He's so talented. The raw skill that he has, I mean, it reminds you of a guy like Panarin or anyone else in the Rangers on their top there. And not Kreider. Well, Kreider too, but I'm thinking more of Zibanejad.
Yep. Just
the offensive awareness and ability of this guy. But if he needs more time and the Rangers want to do that, I don't think there's a reason to rush it. Your rebuild's already going probably as successful. Obviously, we'll have to see if they win a cup or how long that takes. But you look around every sports league, And the Rangers probably had the quickest rebuild to the Yankees in the recent memory. And I think the Rangers becoming a dominant force are going to be not. I don't think they're a year away. I think they're going to be a really hard team to play against this season. I think they're going to be competing for. I don't think they're going to be a wild card spot. I really don't. I don't trust the Penguins.
So you think they're going to finish in the top 3 in the Metro?
Well, I'm sort of also thinking that we might have expanded again.
Well, what if the Metro isn't the Metro? Because we've seen these types of scenarios with COVID where they're lessening travel, in which case they're going to switch it around a little bit. And if they do, that division is stacked.
Well, I was thinking more of like where the Flyers finished this year with the 4th spot. I'm thinking that the Rangers could be at that 4th spot.
Well,
if they continue.
Remember, the Flyers finished 2nd, and they played a round robin.
No. They finished the 4th, and they finished.
Well, they finished after. No, they were the 4th overall seed in the East, but they finished 2nd in their division.
Oh yes. I think if the situation's the same, they'll be that 4th seed going in. I don't. Okay. It's so hard. I don't know. The Rangers just. You look at their offense and you think that's at least a top 5 offense in the league. It should be. You're looking at their offense, and then the defense. So you're like, all right, they're probably like 20th to 22nd in the league.
That all depends on Shesterkin. I think that we're going to see a situation where in 2005, 2006, Henrik Lundqvist was a rookie goaltender that had to win 30 games, stand on his head, and they wound up getting swept in the first round by the Devils. Shesterkin's going to have to fill that exact role and be that rookie goaltender that comes in and just solidifies the net and stops these chances, because they're going to give up glorious chances. I mean, that's just not a question. They have too many defensemen that are going to have lapses. They're too young. Their top pair is Ryan Lindgren and Adam Fox. Both are under 23 years old. So you're going to have some defensive lapses there. But to me, the Capitals are still a better team. The Flyers are a better team. And the Hurricanes are a better team. And I think that those 3 teams are going to be the top 3 in the Metro. And then you're battling with the Islanders and Penguins for that last 1 or 2 spots, because the Atlantic is still very good also. So it's going to be tough to get in. Do they have the ability to sneak in? Of course. Goaltending and offense. They scored 3.5 goals a game last year, 3.3 maybe, whatever it was. They're going to be closer to 3.6, because if everybody increases, their goal total will increase. Defensively is where it becomes a little bit of a problem, but they have guys that could wind up stepping up. If Smith plays the way he did when they first traded for him, that playoff run, they have a good guy right there, and they have young kids that'll be up, but it'll be interesting to see if they'll make the playoffs, but they will be battling with the Islanders.
I mean, it's just so exciting to be a hockey fan from this area. I mean, even go 8 hours up to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Buffalo Sabre fans must be going nuts that, yes, they know they have an issue in goal and they need to solidify their defense and they need a lot to work on. They just got a superstar to play alongside Eichel. So if anything, if they're not going to win games, it's going to be damn near a lot more exciting than they've seen in quite some time. But let's go to the Islanders now.
Definitely.
It's been pretty quiet. They've had few minor signings. You have 27-year-old Austin Czarnik and 25-year-old Grant Hutton both get 2-year deals. Czarnik, 8 games played with the Flames last season. Got 121 career games over the last 4 seasons. He was an undrafted player, a depth guy. Will he crack the roster? Probably not. Probably an AHL guy. You look at Grant Hutton, 6 goals, 15 assists, and 55 games played for Bridgeport. He was the captain at Miami University in Ohio in his senior year. He is also undrafted. He's been with the team the last 2 years. So he's been a guy that's played in Bridgeport, but he's a defenseman. And I like those numbers from a defenseman as well. And I think that, the Islanders have a lot of questions on defense. Will he be at training camp? Probably. Will have to fight for a job. Don't think he'll win one, but it's good to have guys like that in your system. One rumor going around before we get to Devon Taves trade is that Schneider will be brought in, Corey Schneider. They're just trying to work on all the money and everything involved with that. But we talked about it last episode, is the fact that Corey Schneider is trying to resurrect his career. And the last time he joined the new team was with the Devils, and Lamoriello was at the helm. And Lamoriello believes in him. And I think with Sorokin potentially not being ready to start in the NHL when next season begins, it'll be very easy to put Schneider in there backing up Varlamov, see limited workload. Obviously, we'll see how his numbers go. If he plays the way he played with the Devils, he will not. It'll probably force the hand of Sorokin coming up and playing the backup role until he's fully ready. But that's a rumor. Lou Lamoriello said that rumor is probably going to come to fruition, and he doesn't usually give away anything. So you could probably bet money on that will happen.
I think it's pretty much done at this point. That
Yeah.
It's just the minute details have to be worked out.
There's also quote unquote gentleman's agreement in place for Matt Martin to return on a 2-year deal. I'm not saying that's realistic. I think he should come back 2 years. I'm not sure about 2 years, but you have to keep this fourth line intact if you want to see this team go anywhere. And then also with Devon Toews being traded, Lamoriello also said there's a big chance that Andy Green returns. In his age and where he's living and his family, he doesn't want to move. I don't think he's going to move. I think he will be back with the Islanders. All right, let's go to the Devon Toews trade. Happened last week. 2 second-round picks, a 2021 and a 2022, come to the Islanders for Devon Toews, who played top 4 minutes for the Islanders last season. He struggled in the playoffs at times with some dumb, boneheaded plays like icing the puck. Face-off happens. Islanders give up a goal. Happened a couple of times. But, a guy like that, not a rookie, but he hasn't played playoff hockey, and he finally gets to do that. I mean, he played the year before that, but he's still a young guy trying to find his way in the NHL. Avalanche got a great defenseman. That trade, you won't know how it pays off until you see how Dobson plays, because if Dobson plays better than Toews, then it worked out. If Dobson struggles and the Islanders go, dang, we need a defenseman, oh, you gave one away. And then with Toews, too, he's joining a very good team where his role is going to be a little different, but if he gets to play with a guy like Makar or anyone on that team for that matter, I mean, that's a winning culture right there, and you hope nothing but the best for him. The problem here is, let's look at Islanders have 2 RFAs that need to be re-signed in Ryan Pulock and Matt Barzal. And, I did a lot of research today looking around at projections, and I came up with 5 years, $5.5 million for Pulock, and 4 to 5 years for Barzal at around $8 million. And, do the math. That's $13.50 between them. And the Islanders have $8.9 million in cap space. That's a problem. Now, the Islanders have players that they need to move. Boychuk's getting $6 million annually. They got to move him. Komarov's getting $3 million annually. And Ladd's getting $5.5 million annually.
Who's going to take that contract?
No, exactly. The question is, Boychuk was being shopped. You assume that you're going to have to throw in a pick there. You have to look at teams. But the thing is, though, if the Islanders want to sign those guys to that money, which that's a stretch, hopefully you look at one of these guys, maybe Barzal takes less. They want to, Lamoriello explains, hey, look what's happening with COVID. I feel a lot of athletes pay attention to what's going on around them in their communities. Look what's happening. Maybe take 1 or 2 year deal to help us out or take less money. I think they'll find a way to work it out financially, but at the same time, though, they need to clear. Boychuk's probably the biggest contract they have to try to get rid of. And
now let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If they follow the Rangers model of what they did with Stahl, they traded Stahl and a second-round pick to Detroit. Do you think that the 2 second-round picks they acquired for Devon Toews could be utilized now to move somebody like a Boychuk?
Definitely. And I think that obviously we don't know what's inside the head of Lou Lamoriello at all times because he's very secretive. But no question about it. I think that one or both of those picks could be moved with a Boychuk. I even think that I read about that too, with Boychuk and a second-round pick going somewhere. The only question is, will the Islanders have to eat up anyone's cap? If they trade Boychuk, are they going to have to eat some of that? Well, not that they want to eat half of it, but even taking half of that off leaves a lot of cap space. It's an extra $3 million. But it's tough. It's tough.
If the Rangers were able to move Stahl's full contract with a second, then the Islanders should be able to as well. But the cool thing here is that these are 2 rivals that had a similar situation. The Rangers kind of beat the Islanders to the punch there by getting rid of Stahl, getting his cap unloaded onto a team like the Red Wings that at the time had all this space. Now they've gone and signed players, and they still have cap space, but will they be willing to take on a second contract like that? Probably not. So the market becomes a little smaller to move Boychuk, but obviously Boychuk, I think, has a little more to his game still than Stahl may. So giving a second-round pick might be willing to take a team. But it's tough, too, because he didn't wind up playing in the postseason after that, a little bit of an injury. And will a team want to take a flyer? So I don't think the Ladd contract, even with the second, gets moved with the way he played. Komarov, when they signed him, they gave him too much money. But do they move Aletty?
Well, they said they're not gonna do that, and I don't hate that. He's very young. He is 29 years old.
Makes no sense. We talked about this yesterday.
Since he was 18, everyone has to comment, "Oh, this guy's so old. He sucks. He doesn't have the legs that he used to have." Well, that might be true. He might not have the legs he had when he was 18, 11 years ago. But this guy's only 29 years old.
Yeah.
If he's struggling to play, it's not because of his age. It's because he's just not as good. But you cannot contribute that to his age. Maybe it's the amount of ice time he's played because, again, he started so young. But they can't afford to lose. You can't get rid of Boychuk to clear cap space, and then you can't get rid of Leddy. There are too much holes on defense. But one place I do potentially see Boychuk landing is the Senators. Why not? They have so many young guys. They bring Dadonov in, which was you didn't see that coming.
Nope.
They still got the cap room. They can use some help on defense. Boychuk's not the same player he used to be. He's very injury riddled. He's old. But again, he's a leader. And the Islanders brought him and Leddy. The Islanders got Boychuk and Leddy the same offseason, I think it was 5 years ago. I don't remember. I can't do the math. But they brought them in because they both had won. They both knew what it take to win at this level. And I think Boychuk's done his job with the Islanders. He's got them to being a consistent playoff team. He's played his minutes. He's taken a back seat, but you definitely know he was speaking in the locker room. He's watching him from a different perspective. He gives his insights. And now, like we saw with Greiss turned the Islanders franchise around. He helped out on the goaltending, helped the Islanders become a team year after year that's going to be successful. And now he joins the Detroit Red Wings team trying to do the same thing. Can Boychuk do that with the Senators team that's trying to turn the page? So I think that might be a nice landing spot for him. But the Islanders, their biggest concern is clearing the cap space because at what point does Barzal? Well, Barzal has no choice. Okay, they have no choice. They're RFAs. They have to offer. But the same thing is you don't want if they're miserable.
If he holds to arbitration, though,
yes, his worth is going to be.
His worth now gets determined by a third party.
Yes.
And based on what Barzal's done over the last couple of years, based on the contracts that have been signed by players similar to him, and based on the fact that the Islanders haven't given him really a number one weapon around him to help his numbers even increase further, I would tend to believe that an arbitrator would side with him. So that could put the Islanders in further financial distress. So I think if I'm sitting in the Islanders front office, I want to get his contract done before he gets to that arbitration hearing.
Well, that's the problem, though. They have to make moves now.
Yeah. So it's very they have time technically because, like you said, he is an RFA and he does have the arbitration hearing that he has to go through if it gets to that point. But you got to start maneuvering some cap flexibility right now if you want to make sure that Barzal comes back, Pulock comes back, and that you're solidified before all this stuff turns to out of your control.
I'm telling you right now, Barzal and Pulock are both coming back. The question is, when is that going to be official? Because I don't know when arbitration. I think it's coming up. The hearings.
The hearings are spread out over the next 3.5 weeks. So players they vary depending on team. Whenever they're scheduled. So honestly, they might not even be near each other. They could be 2.5 weeks apart, but they're starting soon.
The problem is when you look at a team like maybe the Senators and they say, okay, well, the Islanders don't have any leverage in any of the trades they need to make because the other teams know, well, they need the cap room. So let's force them to give us as much as they possibly can. And that's the problem. There's Boychuk. They go, okay, can I have Boychuk a second round pick? Oh, give me someone else. And when the Islanders have to look in themselves and go, we don't want to, but we need to clear this cap room. That's more important. And does that go above a player that they asked for? I'm not sure what the case would be there. But
I mean, the Kings have cap space, right? I mean, I'm trying to look at teams that have it. The Predators have a little bit. The Blue Jackets still have cap space, but I don't know if that's the team that he's going to go towards. It really comes down to the Devils, Red Wings, and Senators are the three teams that have the most cap space. And will the Devils want to help out the Islanders? Probably not. So now you're left with two, one of which already helped the Rangers. So a lot of maneuverability still has to occur for the Islanders to get where they want to be next season. But I think that they will get there. When we come back from this commercial break, we will go into our speed skate. We got a few questions to answer, a lot of controversial takes, so stay with us.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the BS Sports Show on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back to the BS Sports Show, everybody. I'm Brendan. With me is Stefan. And now we're going to get into the fun portion of the show, which is the speed skate. We got a couple of questions here that we're going to dive into. We're each going to have a minute to give our spiel on what's going to go on with our answer to that question. And then after we both answer, we'll have another minute each to kind of rebut or agree with what our partner has to say here. So, Stefan, I'm going to ask you the first question. You get to answer it first. The first question is, with COVID-19 still a major concern, should fighting be allowed in the NHL next season? You got a minute. Go for it.
Well, you look at it and it is technically fighting allowed because you get a penalty for it. So technically it goes against the rule books. But I think it'll come down to how this COVID is going on, because the last thing you want to see is two guys drop the gloves, spitting in each other's faces, getting all, close, and then one of them tests positive and you spread it. But you look at the, hockey in the bubble. That's what it was. No one was positive because they were in a bubble. The regular season, though, is not bubble hockey. They're going to be traveling, hopefully limited travel, but they're going to be traveling to new arenas, different hotels, all that stuff. And I think you will see players test positive, unlike you saw in the playoffs. That being said, you're not going to take hitting out of the game. Face-offs are as close to the face as fighting is, but I think that it comes down to maybe take the season off of fighting just for the sole factor of, you drop the gloves. Now it's hand contact, with gloves on and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to transfer the virus, as we that's what we think. But if you're dropping the gloves and fighting and punching someone and blood gets on you, all that kind of stuff, I don't want to see it gone. I think fighting is the right thing to do, but the NHL has already shown that they are a leader in fighting this virus and they take the precautionary steps. And if fighting is going to expose more players, families, all that kind of stuff to it, I don't think it should be in it. So my final answer is I don't think fighting should be in it because it is close-to-close interaction and it does not involve gloves being worn. Now, if they're fighting with gloves on, fine, keep it. But at the same time, I think it's a little too close. But then you look at face-offs. I'm going to go with fighting. Let's base it off the virus. But if the virus is still bad and they're trying to play the season, I think fighting should not be allowed.
Well, if the virus is still bad and they're trying to play the season, yeah. I think they're going to go back to bubbles. It worked already. Why wouldn't they do it? I
think bubble is hard, though, when it's 30-plus teams.
Yes, but it was 24. You could just do four separate bubbles if they're doing divisional play. They'll fix the schedule accordingly. But my answer is yes, fighting will be allowed. The game is already played in close contact and close quarters. You already said face-offs. What about when they're all in the crease together? What about when they're throwing a body check? The body check is as close as you're going to get. It's even closer than fighting in some instances because at least fighting you have your hand and your distance a tiny bit. But to me, I think that fighting is going to be there. It's so significantly less prevalent than it was 5-10 years ago, even, let alone 25-30 years. But I think that you're still going to see players go at it. Just the heat of the moment, the passion of the game. They're going to be sitting shoulder to shoulder on the bench. There's so many other instances where they're in close contact that not allowing fighting because of that, I think, is a little ridiculous. Not allowing fighting because of other reasons, I could see why. But I say yes, fighting will be allowed.
All right, I will go back on that and say, okay, I like fighting being part of the game. I want it to happen. I just don't, like you said, fighting's not as prevalent. I guess, face-offs, they're right in each other's faces. My biggest thing, though, is the gloves coming off. That's the only thing where, you're rocking someone in the face. For instance, you get in someone's mouth. It's just, you don't want someone to fight and then they blame, let's say players fight and then you hear a week later someone tests positive and they go, it was the fighting. Obviously, it could have been anything else, the travel from the hotel, all that kind of stuff. But say, well, where were players exposed? Well, they did drop the gloves and they fought in the hands. That could have been it. I don't want them to blame fighting for a reason if there is a breakout. But at the same time, though, fighting's a big part of the game. Like, same thing, a big hit. You need to rile up a team. And I don't think it will get eliminated. But if I'm basing it off just with COVID and everything like that, just be as safe as you possibly can. Scrums after whistles, I think, will be a little bit – they'll have quicker whistles and breaking that up because they don't want that face-to-face. It just, you have to see. If it's a bubble format, though, go for it. If they do and they want to travel and do all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of things I think teams might not be able to do.
I have the perfect solution. If you're worried about the germs on the hands, the refs have to carry around hand sanitizer. And if you're going to drop the gloves, they got to spray a little hand sanitizer in each of your hands. You rub it up together and then go at it. Full tilt.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Okay, so Purell is going to sponsor the fighting part of the NHL hockey this season, and we are going to, you heard it here first, we have created this idea of what makes fighting healthy during COVID-19, but I think that in all seriousness, it's hard to rule it out. If they haven't ruled it out yet for the concussion reasons and all the other safety precautions that it should be ruled out for, they're looking at head contact and all this stuff, then I don't think this is going to change that. But at the same time, you do see a lot more guys coming in that are skilled that don't fight. And in a regular season, when the intensity is not as heightened, I think fighting will be less anyway, especially as the players are a little aware of what's going on. So the regular season, I don't think it'll be disallowed, but I don't think you'll see as much as you have in the past. postseason, once that starts up, though, that's when you'll start to see it more again.
I think the league will speak to the players and just say, listen, just be smart. Just be smart. Don't do what Gobert did after in his post-game conference and touch everything. It's just not the smart thing to do.
No,
definitely not. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Who will have more points this upcoming season? Jack Hughes, who scored 21 points last season, or Capo Caco, who had 23 points last season?
Now, this is tough because I think both are going to increase their totals. I like Hughes and I like Caco a lot. And I'm not saying Caco just because I'm a Rangers fan. I'm saying it because he is likely to get promoted to the second line, which means he will be playing with Artemi Panarin and Ryan Strome. Panarin's a Hart Trophy finalist. He had 95 points. Over 60 of those points were assists, right? So there's a reason that he is that good at passing the puck. He finds open teammates. And somebody like a Capo Caco, who went from playing with other young guys, playing with Di Giuseppe and Edel, he's now going to be able to just find a little bit of open ice. And if you find that open ice, Panarin will find you. And I think that naturally that will increase his point total. So I know that Hughes is playing with Nico Hischier, who's also very talented. That top line there is good also, but they don't have a Panarin, right? Nico Hischier is not Panarin. So I think that just because Caco's playing with Panarin, his point total will be higher than that of Jack Hughes.
All right, well, I'm going to agree with you. Just for the fact that I'm going more to a physical aspect of their games. I think, I wrote it down here actually, the height difference and the weight difference, but Caco's a bigger player. I think he's got 20-something pounds on Hughes and a couple inches, and I think he is more likely to go to those dirty areas, and a lot more goals are scored in the dirty areas than anywhere else on the ice. Jack Hughes, I think he's a great player. He's got great vision, great shot, all that and stuff, but crashing the net is not one of his things that he could do. He's just not a big enough guy. And I think with a guy like Panarin and a guy like Zibanejad, first, like you said, Panarin finds you. And I think with Capo Caco on whether it be maybe a power play opportunity or going and getting those dirty rebounds, that's going to add a lot more points to his stat sheet. And a Jack Hughes guy's going to have to rely on his shot. Maybe making a cross-seam pass on the power play or a quick pass. But Jack Hughes' game is not in tight. It's around the offensive zone and using his skill and his skating ability to do so. I just think Capo Caco, you said he's got a Panarin. You have Palmieri, Hischier, and Hughes. That's who's on that top line. But you don't know if Palmieri is going to be there when the season begins. He's talked about in trade rumors. I think Hughes has a lot of upside. I think he's going to be a great player. But the way this Rangers team is going from their rebuild and the young guys they have around them, and Capo Caco, no, he didn't have a great season. Neither did Hughes. But, it's like saying, all right, playing with a guy like Panarin or playing with a guy like Palmieri. They're both great players. One of them is a lot better and a lot better at finding you. And I think for that reason, like you said, Capo Caco is going to have a better year.
Now, when we saw the Rangers participate in a brief appearance in the postseason, Capo Caco, for the first time, really in over a year, had rest, right? He had played with Finland in the World Tournaments. He had played in the Finnish Elite League before coming to the Rangers and then playing there. So that was a lot of hockey for an 18-year-old to play. All the travel he had to do around the world. He was tired. He came out in that 3-game postseason stint and went off. Like, not point-wise, he didn't have a point. But at the same time, he was physically prevalent. He was crashing the net. He was going to the dirty areas. He was taking shots, stuff we hadn't seen from him all year. He was very passive in his first season with the Rangers. And then come the postseason time, he turned it up. He had the ability to find the puck, find those loose areas. And now you do that when you're playing with Panarin. You're going to guarantee to get yourself more points. It doesn't matter who it was. If you switch Hughes and Caco and Hughes is playing with Panarin, he's going to finish with more points. This is not a player versus player battle here. It's who he's playing with. And I think that, like you mentioned, with Caco's ability to get to the dirty areas a little bit more than Jack Hughes, that does help him in next season having even more points. Because, listen, if you crash that net on a Panarin shot, you have the ability to tip it. You have the ability to get the rebound. And we saw Strome, who had struggled over the last 3 years to find a home on a line, all of a sudden his point total is at 59 because he played with Panarin. So I think you're going to see something similar with Caco.
It's also a better team.
Yeah.
The Rangers are just a better team than the Devils at this point. They could surprise us. The Devils, with their moves they made, and Crawford could play out of his mind behind Blackwood, and this team could be a lot better than we expect. But Jack Hughes is going to have to play a part in that. He's going to have to take a step up in his career. I just think for this, the only reason I could seeing Hughes score maybe more points is the fact that he's one of their go-to guys.
Yeah.
Look at the Rangers, and they have so many weapons that Caco's there. But he's not, I'm a top guy. For Hughes, if the Devils are going to win and be successful, he's going to have to rack up a lot of points. And that, doing the percentage on the team, Hughes might have to score like 20% of the goal, 20% of the points. For a guy like Capo Caco, he doesn't have to get such a high percentage of the points for the team to be successful. So that's the only way you may see Hughes get more, but I think that Capo's in a better position to succeed points-wise.
I would completely agree with you. Before we move on to the next question, reminder to please download the Worldwide Sports Radio Network app. It is available on Apple, on the iTunes App Store. It's available on Google Play for Android, all phones. Download it. You'll never miss a show. It's the way to go. All right, so back to the third and now final question of the Speed Skate. And this one, to me, is the most exciting one that we have planned because you can go a lot of ways. There's really no wrong answer, and there's a lot of good goaltending tandems in the league. So, Stefan, I'll turn it to you. Which goalie tandem in the NHL is the best one starting next season?
Yeah, so after hearing what Fleury had to say and the way Leonard played when he got to Vegas and in the postseason, it's hard to not want to go with them. I think that Fleury has a bounce-back year. Last season, 27, 16, and 5, 2.77 goals against average, 905 save. That's not great for Fleury. Fleury can do better. I know he'll do better in a lesser role. And for Robin Leonard, 19, 10, and 5, 2.89 goals against average, 920 save. When he first got to Vegas, he was 3-0. I think he was allowing under 1.5 goals per game, 940, 935 save percentage. And in the playoffs, he played well, had a little hiccups here and there. But he is so good, and I can't wait to see what he does. And both of them, if you want to say who has the best, you look around the league, there's a lot of good goalie tandems, but you also have a lot of teams where there's a number one goalie and that's it.
Yep.
A guy like Vasilevsky, where he might be the best goalie in the league, but you can't count him a goalie tandem when his backup's probably going to play maybe 10 games, 15 games, and he's a no-name or whoever the case may be. So you look at this, and it's not a backup starter. It's a 1A and a 1B, and I think that Fleury he's got a lot more left in the tank, I think. And in the lesser role, I think you see his stats climbing with the Pietrangelo joining the team.
Yep.
Yes, they lose Schmidt, but overall, the way this Vegas team plays, it bodes well. It's a similar system to that of the Islanders where the goaltenders they find a way to make the lives a lot easier for the netminders. And I think that, yes, comparing it, well, who's going to, goal saved above average? Some teams are going to have their goaltenders stand out and play absolutely unreal. Like, look at Detroit. You have Thomas Greiss and Bernier on a team that's abysmal. But they might play really freaking well. Both those goals saved above average. Greiss is very good at that, is controlling his rebounds, all that kind of stuff. They might put up great numbers despite the winning-loss record. But for me, I think it's going to be Robin Leonard and a bounce-back year for Fleury to make the best tandem in the league and take that Jennings trophy.
So this was very tough for me because there's a lot. We talked about all of them. You mentioned a few of them, but Bishop Khudobin is a great one in Dallas, right? Rask Halak, Leonard Fleury, your pick, Shesterkin Georgiev now, Price and Allen, even Blackwood and Crawford. But my pick is going to be the tandem in Arizona, which to me is one of the most underrated goalie tandems in the whole entire league, in Darcy Kemper and Antti Raanta. And last year they were terrific. Darcy Kemper finally got the recognition he deserved in the postseason, absolutely standing on his head and carrying an Arizona team to, even though they were eliminated, he was the only reason they were even competitive in that series. So you look at their numbers last year. Kemper went 16-11-2. He had a 2.22 goals against average and a 928 save percentage. He had a goal saved above average of 16.65 and led all netminders with over 25 starts. He had 75.9% of his 39 starts were quality starts, which is unreal. His counterpart and backup, if you want to call him that, is Antti Raanta. He had a 59.4 quality start percentage, had 15 wins, a 2.63 goals against average, and had a goal saved above average of 11.69. So you look at those numbers, the two of them combined had over 67% of their starts were quality, and the league average is 53 for a goaltender. So the two of them combined had better than one goalie's average, which to me is absurd. You look at how good they were together. They're still together this year. When Raanta gets a little banged up, Kemper steps in. When Kemper gets banged up, Raanta steps in. They don't seem to miss a beat. So for me, they're going to have to stand on their head this year because of the lack of offense around them now with Taylor Hall's departure. But they are good enough to carry and get a couple of wins for their teams, regardless of which guy's in goal.
I think it's a sin that Kemper does not get enough credit.
Yep.
He comes up with the Wild. No, doesn't really do much there. He gets dealt. He's now with Arizona, and at times he looks unbeatable. When he's locked on, he went on a stretch this year earlier on in the season where he was just locked in shutouts, less than 2 goals a game, making unreal saves. I mean, this is the Kemper the league's been waiting for. And I think that there was, you talk about Markstrom with Vancouver now on Calgary. Both of those two were surprising. I don't know if it's surprisingly. You knew Markstrom, how good he was. You knew Kemper. Obviously, they're in the NHL. But they took an extra level to their play, and they played so well. And you look at Vancouver with Markstrom, and he was a main reason why they were where they were. Yep. And for Arizona, Kemper needs to get a lot of the credit because he kept them in games, and even in the playoffs, it wasn't easy. And Kemper did all he could.
Well, but they were completely outmatched by Colorado.
Yeah. Oh, completely.
He was facing. I've never seen a goalie actually have to face that many point blank shots from absolute snipers. And the one thing we were saying the whole time was, don't take penalties, and they just kept running out Colorado's power play unit, which was just torching them the whole series. You know who we left off this list out of examples too for a tandem? Yeah.
Martin Jones and Devin Dubnyk.
No, definitely not. They're probably the worst tandem I actually ever seen. But at the same time, there's another Metro Division team that showcased a goaltending tandem, which was completely unexpected.
Could I guess?
You can guess.
Are you talking about the Flyers?
No.
Oh, are you talking about the Carolina Hurricanes?
Nope.
Who are you talking about?
Columbus, Elvis Merzlikins, and Jonas Korpisalo. That's a very good one, too.
Well, but look at Carolina, though, also. The way Mrazek and Reimer played.
They played above their heads in the postseason, but numbers-wise, Reimer had a very good year. Mrazek very average.
We forgot about Columbus. That's a tough one just for the fact that it's pretty much for both of them one season. You're not even for Merzlikins. It's
the same reason I didn't put Varlamov and Sorokin on it, because we've never seen Sorokin play yet, so you can't really include them. But there's a lot of good goalie tandems, and a lot of them are in the Metro.
Oh, we talked about it. I mean, even looking at Carter Hart, who's played really well in the playoffs, and Brian Elliott, who didn't play. He had an .899 save percentage during the regular season, but still a tandem. Still a reason why the Flyers were where they were. You look at. Let's talk about a team that don't have tandems. Let's start with the Metro. You have Tampa. Not Tampa's not the Metro. Let's start with the Atlantic. It's easier. I want to go with them anyway. So Vasilevsky.
Yep.
What other teams are just pure number ones? And I mean, you look at even Ottawa right now. There's no tandem in Ottawa.
There's no goalie.
It's Matt Murray show, but even barely him. But you look at.
I don't trust Matt Murray, especially on that young of a team, to be a legitimate number one goaltender.
I don't trust Matt Murray either. I'm just saying that you're looking at a team that don't have. I mean, look at Washington right now. I think you have a tandem there with Lundqvist and Samsonov. I think that's going to be a really good tandem. And you look at Toronto. It's Anderson. That's it.
Yep.
It's Anderson. That's it. Florida, it really is just Bobrovsky.
Well, their backup played well in his 12 starts.
He did play well, but I wouldn't call him.
Do you trust him? Yes, exactly.
I like what you said about Montreal. That's it. That could be
Montreal's a very low-key tandem because of how good Jake Allen played last year. Jake Allen surprised everybody with his role as a backup, and now he's backing up Carey Price, who is considered one of the best goalies in the league, even though his numbers last season were nowhere close to the top.
And then you look at Buffalo doesn't have a goalie, really. No. And Detroit's got Bernier and Greiss, which that's going to be a tandem. It's going to be a tandem for sure. But the question is, how good of a tandem are they going to be? They're going to have a rough life there. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be you have to go. Your GSAA is going to have to be 25 plus for them to even win games at times. So
Thomas Greiss going from the defensive structure that is the New York Islanders under coach Barry Trotz to the defensive lapse that is the Detroit Red Wings is going to be one of the most exhilarating transitions to watch, just because of the fact that I like Thomas Greiss. I think he's a consummate professional, and he's going from a place where he kind of found himself, made so many big saves, and the only type of save he's going to have to make next year is big saves. We watched Jimmy Howard just get absolutely shredded because they have no defensive structure. They're all young guys, and now to make matters worse, you are adding Mark Stahl to that.
Potentially others like a Boychuk or but look at the Western Conference, and I'm just looking through the teams now, and one that stands out to me is the Flames. You have Korpisalo and Rittich. And
not Korpisalo.
I mean, oh my God. You have Markstrom.
Yeah.
You have Markstrom and Rittich. And, can Markstrom do what he did last year? It's up in the air. Rittich has been their go-to guy for a couple of years, but when it mattered, he wasn't prevalent. So I think that'll be an interesting one to see, given the fact that Markstrom's a starter.
Yep.
But you have Rittich, and I think he will get playing time. Just looking down this list, and I mean, that's pretty. I mean, you go to it. Let's talk about it. We got 6 minutes left. Devin Dubnyk and Martin Jones. Are they going to be the greatest goalie tandem of all time, or they're going to be so bad that you're going to just have to turn the TV off because it's going to be a wreck?
There's nothing to talk about. I don't have faith at all in either one of them.
Well, someone does.
We're talking about the same group that continues to sign players that are past their prime because they have this inkling of hope that maybe they'll pan out for one season together. Joe Thornton finally got his right sense and left. And I don't know if going to Toronto is going to help him achieve that goal of winning a Stanley Cup, but I don't think it will either. But he definitely has a better shot there than San Jose. And I know San Jose was very injured last year, and that played a role into their, very, very poor season. But at the same time, this isn't a group that, without Pavelski there, they're all getting older now. The defense hasn't performed to the way it is. Mark-Edward Vlasic used to be a premier shutdown guy. He's not that anymore. Carlson has taken a downward turn. Burns is getting up there in age. I don't trust that group to help out two guys that are the hottest or coldest goaltenders in the league.
All right, so let me ask you something. Who do you think is going to be the best goaltender in the league this upcoming season, and who do you think is going to be the worst?
Oh, God.
Well, the worst might be easier, so you can start with the worst.
I mean, it's tough.
Not including backups. Either the 1A in a tandem or the pure number one goalie. Which one's going to be the worst?
I mean, worst by disappointment or statistically?
Honestly, do disappointment. Let's do disappointment.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that it's. I look towards Carey Price at being a disappointment. Okay. I look towards Mikko Koskinen at disappointing again. And I know that he played well last season, but they didn't really help themselves out by re-signing Mike Smith and not doing anything to that goalie tandem. So that's to me the guy that I look at and say, I mean, Darcy Kemper could be that guy because he's going to be facing a lot more shots, not going to be getting anywhere close to enough help. And he could be in for a letdown. There was trade rumors around him, so that's another guy that could be looking at that. But to me, those three stand out without looking at any stats or anything right off the bat.
All right, so for me, the worst, I think, or the disappointing, I think it's going to be Jordan Binnington. Okay. He looked so bad in the playoffs, and we judge him based off not even one full year. He gets called up, goes on a complete run, does his thing, and then had not a great year this year. I mean, you can't blame one person for losing a playoff series. He did not play well when called upon, and it wasn't even close. I mean, Jake Allen, good for Jake Allen to get out of there because, he's going to be with the Canadians, and he's not going to have a huge, huge role, but he'll have a similar role to what he had this past year where he had great numbers. And Binnington now doesn't have the support. Yep. It was easy to say, Binnington wasn't great, but Jake Allen was really good. So this, you didn't talk about him. You talked about the St. Louis Blues making the playoffs and trying to repeat. Now, if Binnington struggles, no Pietrangelo. Yes, they have Torrey Krug, but no Pietrangelo. No backup, really. So it's all on Binnington if Binnington doesn't play well, this team is not making the playoffs. And I think that I just don't think he's as good of a goalie as we're making him seem to be, basing him off one good run. The Hamburglar is the thing that comes to mind. He had one good run with the Senators. And now he's playing AHL hockey, and he'll probably never play in the NHL again.
I think that Binnington, though, played well last year in the regular season. He struggled in the postseason.
Well, he didn't play great in the regular season. He had solid numbers, but he was not the Binnington that we saw.
Well, it's hard to be that good consistently.
Oh, completely. But
so I think he was solid enough where you could say, okay, this guy can start and be a number one for us. Postseason time, though, he has to bounce back.
I just think he's going to be I think we're going to see more of what we saw in the postseason this year than we think. Because I just don't. I don't know.
I can't argue.
It's tough. I mean, you can argue.
And I can't because it's unknown. He had one great run and then one up and down season. In that same division, though, the Minnesota Wild just signed Cam Talbot. That could be a huge disappointment.
Could be.
I mean, he's coming into a new scenario. We saw when he left the Rangers to go to Edmonton, didn't really work out. They gave him a pretty good sum of money considering he's been bouncing between a backup and starter the last 2-3 years, and they gave him the reins to their goaltending situation. So,
Well, I think we can both agree though that Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the league.
yes,
I really want to see Gibson have
a team around him.
Well, they got Shattenkirk.
They did.
And I know he couldn't handle himself with the Rangers, but he joined a Lightning team that's really good, but it's still a smaller market. Now he goes to Anaheim, probably a smaller market. And he'll help them on defense. I just hate seeing Gibson give it his all every single night and just consistently lose. He's so good. We saw him in person.
Yep.
He's so good. And
the saves that he made in that game, and that was when Pittsburgh was like rolling
loaded.
too.
Yeah.
After playing with Vasilevsky and Chell last night, he's the best goalie in the league. I've never seen a Chell goalie make that many saves. And first of all, the save where he goes behind his back is just unreal.
Yeah, he's just
the blindfolded glove save. He's very, very talented. But you're seeing a lot. I know we have to end right now, but we're seeing a lot of good goalies come in, and a lot of them are Russian-born, and a lot of them are playing in the KHL before coming here. So that's a trend. And the Rangers and Islanders are the two local teams here, and they both have a Russian guy that they think is going to be that next Andrei Vasilevsky type that's going to steal games. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this week's edition of the BS Sports Show. We'll be live next week on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time as well. So don't miss that. We'll have a couple of guests come on, and we're going to have another great show planned. So see you next week.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.